We begin tonight with David Perry, who has extensive experience in promoting the arts both professionally and for nonprofits. Was recently honored by the Business Arts Council for all his work. I don't think there's a way to be able to describe all the things you've done in such a short time of being here in San Francisco. We just had, we were discussing with Al Bakari the past, when artists, all they had to worry about is becoming a talent, and then they'd be discovered, whether they were comedians on Broadway or whether they were musicians, poets, sculptors. But now there's so many artists, so many dance groups, and so many musicians in San Francisco. How does one now rise up and make a name for themselves? Or is that era over with when you have big stars coming out of San Francisco?
No, you know, San Francisco has been known for all its history, I mean, since the 1850s, as being a city that liked new and exciting stuff. One of the things we're working on now, for instance, is actually an idea that came out of our firm. Our creative director, Alfredo Casuso, came up with the idea of recreating Enrico Caruso's last concert in San Francisco, which was the night before the great 1906 earthquake. Well, everyone knew that Enrico Caruso then was the greatest tenor in the world.
Yes.
Even though there was no technology, everyone showed up to hear him that last night. So we wanted to bring attention to the cultural history of San Francisco. So I think your question is very, very well timed.
You have, as you were saying before we went on the air, we had 3 networks, then we had cable. Now not only do we have cable, but for like our program, we are now streaming our videos of our interviews. There's another medium right there.
Absolutely.
You have the internet and so on. How do artists in San Francisco then deal with that, or do they just, like in cable, slice a segment out and just be happy with that and not become a superstar?
Well, you know, I tell a lot of our clients who are artists, performing art groups, nonprofits, theaters, musicians here in the city, that they really are lucky. I think we are embarrassed with riches here in the city because we have, I mean, think of it, we're a city of less than 1 million people. Look at how many papers, alternative, mainstream, bloggers, online sites, cable shows like this, we have. So in a sense, it's hard getting coverage. In a sense, it's really easy. You know, there is no privacy anymore. Anyone can be an entertainer. Anyone can be a blogger or a journalist. So what you need to do is execute what I call the 3 Gs. It's the only original thought I think I've ever had as far as media, and that is there are 3 Gs to this business. Get the media or the public's attention, get them information, and then get out of the way. And I think that it is both becoming easier and harder to get attention. It is harder to keep that attention going.
See, that's why I was so interested in having you on the program, because this is what you do. I mean, your job is exactly that, is to take a client, whether you're doing it pro bono or doing it for profit, and to deal with this. And people don't realize in the whole dot-com era, the public relations firms were so important.
Oh, of course.
Because obviously they were trying to con the investor.
Well, yeah, and also
many of
to
them
do
were. You know what I mean? They had nothing. They had no profits. They only had the glitz. And then all those firms died. All those public relations firms died. But yours didn't.
No, well, you know, I like to say that people say, how did the dot-com bust affect you? And I always say, well, it didn't hurt us at all. There's always struggling artists and nonprofits. My business model is secure. San Francisco has more dance companies and dancers than
we've had several here.
Any city except New York. And it's more creative and more interesting. It's easier in a sense to launch in San Francisco than it is someplace like New York. The difficulty is getting a paying audience for it.
Yes, and this is exactly my point. How do you do that?
Well, in every way. You know, I'll have clients come to me and say, what can you do for me? And there have been clients that I have not taken because I'll say, I can't help you. I can't get you enough attention to sell enough seats to justify what you do. Here's what I advise you to do. Sometimes I advise clients to stage special events. Sometimes I encourage them to, first and foremost, get some good video. I think if I had to give one piece of advice that I hope an artist or an arts group looking at the show takes back to them, back to their offices with them, is get good digital images, get good video. Find someone who can really get you 1, 2, 3 minutes worth of video that is broadcast quality, that can be streamed on the internet, that can be sent to a local cable station, that can execute that first G. Get the media's attention so that maybe then they'll bring their cameras and do coverage of their own.
All right, so that's what you meant by get, it's a grabbing too.
Yeah.
a grabbing of attention, and we have been fortunate on this program to have 3 or 4 representatives from dance companies. I'm amazed by the amount of talent and so on. Someone here mentioned to me before we went on the air that this other phenomena of the housing not being available for artists and space being relinquished that was normally rehearsal space or dance space, that the era of Al Bakari, that when he was on the program, where artists interacted a lot, different artists interacted, and that created the synergy in San Francisco.
Yes.
That's not here with it.
It's not, and it's sad. I mean, I have said to several clients, a couple of whom have taken our advice, a couple of others that I wish would take our advice, you need to think more about merger. You know, this is a time when people have to get creative and lean and mean. You know, one of the reasons our business is still around is because we, I believe, early on accepted that the internet and email especially was going to change the way we do PR. You know, there was a time when I would take 30, 40, sometimes more calls a day. I take maybe 6 a day now, but I also send out, without exaggeration, between 70 and 100 fully realized individual letters. I type fast. That's how journalists want to get information, because if they're busy taking a phone call, they're not writing a story, which is what their job is. So artists and art groups need to get creative too, use their limited resources and merge. Maybe 2 or 3 smaller companies that do similar work can band together, share the administrative cost, share the promotion cost, and still do incredible work. Because there's not cheap space anymore for groups to get someplace south of Market and put on a show. It just doesn't exist. A good model is the San Francisco Girls Chorus, for instance, just bought their own building on Page Street. Not only is that their permanent home, but they have space now that they are making available at low cost to other small nonprofit groups. They're providing that rehearsal space that is fast disappearing in the city.
Let's stay with musicians for a while. A band now can do their own CDs, and they do sell them. Does that mean that more and more of these artists will have a band of supporters, and every so often Hollywood or Nashville or Florida will create the next big act? But if you're not, they create that. They don't. I mean, Britney Spears or those kinds of characters did not create their identity.
But you know, Britney Spears, you know, leave aside what one thinks of her musicianship, is very much a media and Hollywood creation. She's not only selling music; she's selling clothes.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, I think more and more musicians are going to be able to self-produce and make a living doing it because their overhead costs are going to be next to nil. They can produce their own music. They can market it online. They can begin to build a fan base. It just takes organization and relentless drive.
But will they, and we're staying with musicians right now, apply to many different communities in San Francisco, are we seeing the end of the era of the first of all, super movements, like whole waves of musicians coming out of a particular city like Seattle or Los Angeles or San Francisco, and that except for these created superstars, more and more artists should be satisfied that they have a narrow band of loyal listeners and viewers, and they should be happy being able to market their own CDs. That era is gone for San Francisco?
You know, I don't want to say any era is gone. I say that the way it was constituted then is gone. I think the next wave in music is going to be online as well. I mean, we were talking briefly before the show about the impact that gaming is having on the entire entertainment sector. I can't tell you how many people have been surprised to hear the fact that last year, 2005, more revenue was generated by the sale of video games than by sale of movie tickets. I think musicians need to find a way to find creative venues for their work. Maybe they create music for online games, for online communities. I think there will always be creative new movements in music and all the arts in San Francisco.
But San Francisco did create a lot of movements, and there hasn't been one. I mean, that's what I meant. It's so diverse right now that there's nothing you could characterize right now as a movement in San Francisco music-wise.
No, at the moment we're in a state of almost artistic chaos. There's so much going on
that
everyone is trying to find what is the next big thing. And
may there not be a next big thing? That's my point.
Well, I think there will always be a next big thing, but I'm not sure what it is. Believe me, if I knew what it is, I'd be making a lot of money.
But, you know, and again, we focused on the musicians. We've had several dance groups here, and there's theaters. There's so many theater groups, small and large. It goes on and on. It's such an abundance of artists and creativity, but all of it is very segmented and fragmented and so on. What can you do to unite some of these movements and groups so that they have identity as a San Francisco sound or the San Francisco?
Well, I think the San Francisco sound and the San Francisco model is just that, is the kind of what I call organized chaos or the diversity of it. What I would encourage people to do is to come together more. Instead of having, if you're a musician, try to mount your own individual CD or your own individual gig. Look around. Who are the other musicians that you could come together with? Think about the incredible things that have happened over the last few years, the concerts we remember. Live Aid, Hands Across America, all these things that were diverse artists coming together for one purpose. I think in a sense what might lead to a new San Francisco sound is a lot of artists, musicians specifically, from diverse backgrounds coming together around one single theme, one single event. That's what's happening with the earthquake. A lot of people are coming together around this significant moment in San Francisco history to remember the incredible cultural legacy we have.
And you have such a background. You took the Yerba Buena, which was a great architectural event, although I still have questions about its design.
Yeah.
But you then created, you made it a cultural center where all it was steel and glass. You know what you're talking about.
Well, I remember, a lot of people were part of that. I was the first communications director and then the communications and marketing director for Yerba Buena. I was the first person hired to promote it as a cultural center. And I remember when I was hired, the PR was all bad. It's about what was here before, what the redevelopment agency has or hasn't done. And what I said very early on was, this place was conceived to be a showcase for the city's diverse cultural communities. And we began to promote it as just that, the one place where you could go in town to hear everything else that was going on in town. And we just relentlessly promoted that.
And now it is just that. I mean, it's an
just
incredible
that.
crossroads.
When I was there, third admission was people, and I said my office was a third admission, they looked at me kind of askance. And now it is literally what Newsweek magazine calls the most concentrated arts district west of the Hudson River. That's really quite something.
You emphasize in your brochures and online communication. That seems to be the very core of how you operate.
Yeah, I do have a basic philosophy that there are only two systems in the world, fear or dialogue. And what I try to do and what I say our motto is we create dialogue fearlessly. And what I mean by that is everything is communications. We're communicating now. A website is a communication, a blog, a video game in which hundreds, thousands of people every day go online and form communities. It's all communications. And what I mean by removing fear is a lot of my clients are afraid of the press. They'd be afraid to sit here now. You know, what are you going to say to them? What are you going to ask them? Ambush them. And what I'm going to try to say is you need to open the dialogue. You know, the best boss I ever had was at the National Endowment for the Arts, my first boss actually, and he always said you learn more from people with whom you disagree than people that you agree with, and I've tried to take that lesson to heart.
You are going to stay in San Francisco and try to bring about what we've been talking about, and that is...
Cultural renaissance?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Nothing would make me happier than to see San Francisco retain but also improve upon its image as the cultural capital of the United States. And I don't say that just out of jingoism.
You think it is?
Yes, I do, because you look at the great arts institutions here, meaning like San Francisco Opera, the ballet. They became known, yes, for the talent of their performers, but also because they were committed to new works. Look at the great theaters here, the great musicians, the great comics. Where did they start? You go back, people started here. They started here because there was an appreciation for the new and the different and the envelope pushing. And I think that we have that reputation, but we can't sit on our laurels. We need to push on.
David Perry, I hope you stay with us.
Oh, we will.
And I hope our program helps feature some of the artists you're talking about. They should not be afraid of this program. Thanks for being on the program.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.